Are you losing weight or are you losing fat? Because there's a difference. And
Sure is.
we're going to talk about it today because one of them is great for your health and the other is potentially not so good.
Right.
So hang on, we'll be right back. Thank you for joining us today. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel and give us a like for the video. And just want to encourage you to stay with us to the end because we have some great material that we're going over. And really, we're talking about how can I quickly burn fat in 2025 as we're heading into the new year and looking at what are some things I can practically do so that I feel better, I look better, I'm just more comfortable in my clothes.
Yep.
The whole thing, right? So thank you for joining us today, and let's get right into it. And I think the first thing is identifying, like we said, there's a difference between weight loss and fat loss.
Fat loss, yeah.
Yeah. Because weight loss, you can you can do some things that aren't necessarily healthy, and your weight can go down, and you can step on the scale. But you've lost muscle, you've lost water, lost.
So a lot of people think I'm losing fat, and
right?
you may not be.
Right.
Yeah.
But in order for us to have regular fat loss, there's a bit more of a process, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about some pitfalls to avoid first and foremost, right? Yeah. And the thing to keep in mind, a lot of people are looking for the quick fix, right?
Always.
Right?
People often do that. They want it quick and they want it fast, and yet sometimes slow and steady is what does it.
Yeah. Talking about probably one of the biggest things to avoid is the whole fad diet thing, right? So I'm going to do extreme dieting. I'm going to do extremely limited calories for the next 30 days, and I'm going to lose some weight. I'm going to look great in my clothes. So here's the thing. When we do extremes like that, number one, it's not sustainable.
No.
Number two, we can end up losing muscle, which is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have as we age, is adding and keeping that muscle, right?
Keeping it, yeah.
So, and you can lose some weight, but what happened, and maybe you look like you've lost some weight in clothes, but you start becoming what we call skinny fat.
That's right.
Right, and Ruth, you know about that because
I do. So that term is used when you look lean, you look slender, but yet your body fat percentage is too high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't have a whole lot of muscle. That's why.
Yeah.
That happens like that, right? So, and we know that losing muscle slows down metabolism. So we
want to hold on to that.
Right.
To
that's
that
a
muscle.
big deal. So avoid fad diets. So now you might say, well, what about things like keto? If you can reasonably live in a keto lifestyle, great. If you can reasonably live in a low-fat lifestyle, okay.
Yeah.
You have to figure out what works for you. I myself have a more balanced diet.
Yeah.
And that works for me, and I like it. At one point, I was more keto, and I've done that as well. So
yeah, I've done that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
as a personal trainer, I would always try out these trendy diets because my clients were often asking me about it. So I would try it, but they're not for everyone.
Right. And one other thing to just be aware of is like these detox drinks, detox teas and things like that. Now, there may be some value in those things in terms of what they do and how they do it, but I'm going to reiterate again, it's all about lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right? It has to fit with the lifestyle. And the thing is, some of these things can have side effects, or your body can react negatively to some of these detox programs and things like that. If you're doing a detox program to help your body release toxins, that's one thing. But if you're doing it to lose weight necessarily, that's probably not the best angle to pursue, right? So, what else? There's pharmaceutical drugs that you can take for fat loss, and that's not bad necessarily, depending on your situation, right? Some people, because of their physical condition, they have to have some assistance to get the process moving and things like that. So, that's a doctor. That's typically a doctor prescribed thing, and it's monitored by the doctor and things like that. But we just want to be aware that just because you're taking a fat burner, let's say over-the-counter fat burner, you're not necessarily going to lose weight, but there are going to be potential side effects from it. I know there used to be a fat burner way back when with ephedrine, and before they outlawed it, but the
Before
process.
they banned it, yeah, because it caused heart problems for a lot of people.
Yeah, so just be aware of that, okay? Because there are those risks as well. Okay, another one is overdoing cardio. Because, if you just keep doing cardio, like excessive cardio, right? We're not talking about, we've talked about what is good cardio is 30 minutes minimum, 3 times a week kind of thing, just for your body.
Sometimes there's people out there, I was one of those people that always thinks, the more I do, the better I'm going to be. Well, less is more very often. So it is possible to overtrain, it is possible to overdo, and you don't want to fall into that.
Yeah, and ultimately the thing that can happen is too much cardio can actually lead to muscle loss.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And we've already said that. We never want to have that happen.
No.
So the other part of that is if all someone focuses on is the cardio side of it, they're going to lose muscle, period.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to reduce the number of calories that your body is actually burning in the long run.
Yeah.
Because you're not adding any muscle or retaining the muscle that you have. Okay. Okay. The next one is we've been referring to this, but ignoring resistance training.
Got to do it.
Right?
Just do it.
Right. There's no alternative when it comes to muscle. You have to go put your muscles under strain.
So pick up heavy things, put heavy things down in good form to stay injury free.
Yeah. And we've talked about this too, that heavy is all relative, right?
Right.
Like what's heavy for me might not be heavy for you. What's heavy for Ruth might not be heavy for me. And when I go to the gym, I'm learning this more and more and more. Took me 50 years to figure this out. But I'm learning it more and more that I don't need to go to the gym and train like a crazy person.
Beast. No.
Yeah, right. And I heard somebody say this. It was a great quote from Dr. Mike Israetel, and he said, "Your goal when you go to the gym should be what's the least amount of work that I have to do for my body to respond by growing, by adapting to what I'm doing here." So when we talk about lifting heavy things, again, it's all relative. I notice now that I'm training, generally speaking, a little bit lighter than I would normally because I'm focusing on the muscle growth versus muscle strength.
Right.
Right. And there's a difference in training when it comes to things like that. So the other thing about resistance training is it improves bone density. And guess what? As we age, bone density is super important, right? Because I think we did a whole episode where we broke down as far as bone density and muscle loss and things like that. So super important. Okay, the next one is, and we're talking about these are the things to avoid, right? The next one is don't chase the scale, right? So that becomes where it's just a numbers thing for us. We step on the scale, we look at the number, and that's all we think about.
Right, because often it's not so much the number, it's what the number consists of. And so there's other methods that are more accurate than just this number. It doesn't factor in how much of that is water, how much of that is muscle mass, how much of that is body fat. Yeah,
like you can, for example, maybe you weigh yourself, like I weigh myself the same time, the same day of the week. And I record that weight so that we've got a reference for where we got there. Yeah. But I might look at that weight from one week to the next and say, okay, well, the number hasn't changed, but I look more full, or I'm going to just be blunt, I look more fat. Right. So then I can look at that and say, okay, it's not the number, it's what have I been doing? What does that number translate to in my body?
Right.
And then I can make adjustments accordingly. So, and the other thing that goes with the scale is if you're doing the extreme diet of some kind or yo-yo dieting, you'll see the scale move, and that'll be motivation to keep doing it, right? Because if you're cutting calories to the point where you're just dropping off weight, and it's good, bad, or indifferent. So it could be some fat, it could be muscle, it could be whatever, but the number keeps going down. If all you're focused on is the number, you're going to think you're making progress.
Yep.
And
you might not be.
Right. And you're probably not. So, okay, let's talk about some practical tips for prioritizing fat loss. And with that, I would say also for optimizing muscle gain, because they're synonymous, right?
They
the
are,
one goes with the other, and that's where we have to really remember that they go together. Some people are thinking, well, I can only work on muscle, or I can work on losing fat. No, they work together. Okay.
Yeah.
So number one, and we've already said this, is resistance training. In 2025, your fat loss program should include regular resistance training.
Yeah.
Right. Of some kind, whatever that kind, whatever that looks like for you. And, maybe you're not going to go to the gym every day, but maybe you're going to go for a hike. And then at the end of the hike, you're going to do some push-ups or some plyometric work or some squats or something like that, just with body weight exercises. But you're doing some kind of resistance work. So, and we've said this a lot, focus on the large compound movements when you go to the gym.
Yeah.
Right? Like arm curls, okay, sure. How about chin-ups? Because you're going to get your back, your upper back, your arms are going to get engaged in the process. How about bench press? Because, for me, incline bench press, so that you're engaging, again, your shoulders, your triceps, your upper chest. So those big muscle movements are important. Okay, the next one is eat enough protein.
That's big.
We've said it a lot. Our bodies don't store protein. Our bodies store carbs and fat as fat or as glycogen in the muscles, but our bodies don't store protein. So you need to be thinking about, okay, am I getting regular protein intake throughout my day? And is it quality protein intake, right? So, example, you might think, well, I'm eating chicken. Well, is it fried and breaded? Then maybe the quality is not quite there, or there's enough additional stuff that it's not, you're losing the health benefit. How's that?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So rule of thumb, a gram of protein per pound of lean body weight. So whatever that number is, if you're 20 or 30 pounds overweight, you just want to work that number back and see where that puts you. Okay, the next one is tracking body composition. Now, this might be something that you do once a month or once every couple of months or whatever it is, but this is where we really get to the brass tacks, right?
We have to track. I've had training clients who don't want to know what their number is, don't want to know what, and you got to start. You got to know what that baseline is, and then you got to track it so that you know if you're improving or not. Right,
and you know what you're gaining or losing, because I remember years ago I had somebody do, I think it was calipers. We did the calipers anyway, and so years and years ago. So we did the caliper testing, and then I went back, I don't know, 6 weeks later, because I'd introduced some stuff in what I was doing in training. 6 or 8 weeks later, and when she tested me, the second time, my fat was actually higher and my muscle was lower. So she was like, well, I don't know what you've been doing, but it's not working.
It's not working.
And I wouldn't have known that had I not gone and done that.
Exactly.
Right?
So it's better to know that now. Okay, this isn't working. I'm going to make a change. Whereas if you don't track, you could mentally be thinking, yeah, this is going great. I'm going to keep going, stay the course, but you shouldn't be. So that's why it's really important to track. So you can make the adjustments if you need to.
Yeah. And we did one whole episode where we talked about different ways of getting your body composition tested. So I'm going to put that in the description. You can go and have a look at it if you want, whether we're talking calipers, or whether, like the gold seal is like the DEXA scan. And all of those things. Okay.
And I used to really love, one of my favorite ways was measurements. Get up the measuring tape and do the measurements.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It may be it may be a little bit sobering when you do it.
Yep.
Right. but after you measure again in 6 months or whenever you're doing it, or monthly, and I can speak to that because this year I am measuring. Yeah. So I took my initial measurements. I haven't done the follow-up ones yet, but probably every 6 weeks or every 8 weeks, I'm going to measure.
I did that for many years. Whereas if I wanted to grow certain areas and then bring certain areas down, how do I know unless I'm measuring?
Yeah. 100%. Okay. What else? Avoid extreme calorie deficits.
Starvation mode only puts you into a place of holding, and you typically will hold and store body fat.
Right, and you'll burn muscle.
Yeah, so don't do that.
Right. So what is a reasonable calorie deficit? 300 to 500 calories.
Calorie deficit.
Okay.
Anything too extreme, anything bigger than that, and you're not going to be. It's not going to be.
It's not going to help you at all, right?
You think it is, and you cut back so much that your body is fighting you every step of the way.
Yeah. Okay. And the last one is smart cardio. So in other words, sometimes we think more is better.
No.
More is just more in some cases, right? So
Yeah.
when we're talking about smart cardio, we're talking about low impact activities. We're talking about 2 to 3 times a week for probably 30 minutes. And forget about the fat loss part of it. That's just for our heart, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the minimum that we want to do just to keep our heart healthy.
Yeah.
Right. So, remembering that we want to preserve muscle.
Yes.
While we are taking care of the fat. And it happens gradually. I would love if it could happen more quickly.
Oh, I would too.
Right?
But it doesn't. I trained for 10 years before I was just putting my medal away, and that was a 10-year goal. That was 10 years of hard work, and that's a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So it's a gradual process. So if you stay the course, right? My coach told me this, not for this last competition, but the one before, said this to me a couple of times. Trust the process, because I was getting antsy because things weren't happening the way they had happened before with my body. So I was getting a little nervous about, gee, do we need to do something different? What's going on here? And I repeatedly would hear, just stick with the process, stay the course. And so I would say the same thing for anybody that's watching, that once you commit to this lifestyle, stick with the process and stay the course. Because our goal in all of this is we want to add muscle and we want to lose fat. We don't want to necessarily just lose weight and say we're losing weight and it's good.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we've addressed that. And so I think it'd be good if you haven't, take a minute and just, okay, I'm going to evaluate kind of what am I doing this year? What does my plan look like this year? Because I think what happens a lot of times is we don't really make a plan, and we just, okay, well, I'll just go to the gym sort of and see how it goes, and I'll go twice or thrice a week or whatever.
Yeah, and for some people, going to the gym is chatting with other people, so maybe that's cutting into their workout time. When you talk about smart cardio, one of my pet peeves is seeing somebody watching television or reading a book while they're on the treadmill, because cardio is boring. Well, that 45 minutes on the treadmill of cardio now turned into 45 minutes of reading a book, and while you happen to be moving on the treadmill. So it's put the book down, turn off the TV, and focus on the cardio. Focus on what you're doing, and I promise you'll be way more effective. But I see it all the time. I see people who open a book and they're on the treadmill for an hour, and that was great. You read a book for an hour and you walked.
So here's the one thing I would add to that. If you're going to do that and you say, no, I'm going to read, that's fine, but you need to make sure that your heart rate is still getting up where it needs to be, and that you're walking briskly enough so that you're not so engrossed in your book that you're not getting the benefit of the cardio. You
could be at home sitting on a couch reading a book, but people are trying to multitask. And my point is, you're doing the cardio. The cardio is the number one activity, not reading the book.
Yeah. So, you know what? That's it for today. But just take some time and take assessment for yourself and say, hey, I'm taking my health to the next level in 2025. And you know what? It's all out there for us to just make some decisions and move forward. And thank you for watching. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on anything. We are putting out more and more regular content, and just want to give you good information. And so subscribe to the channel, give us a like for the video. That helps us out, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
See ya.